So, anyhow, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Skyline garden class. This is for fall preparation, fall planting tips. Is anybody out there doing some fall gardening right now? Is anybody out there preparing to do any fall gardening? Awesome. What size of garden space are you working with? Oh, I think you're muted, Elisa, if you were.
Oh, hi. Size? Um, Man, I'm bad at like telling what size things are. But the structure me and my dad made, it's like let's say like 3 feet by like oh man, I don't know, like 10. It's sizable.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good size. Some of the things that we wanted to talk about, a lot of the folks that we serve here, they don't have like large garden plots. So one of the goals here was to think about smaller, manageable size garden plots and the type of veggies that could go in there. So I made a little presentation here on um, fall planting tips. So let me see. 1 second. So here we go. Welcome to Skyline Garden. Um, this time of the year, this is the new moon, and me, I always enjoy planting things by the lunar phases. One, it just helps you to keep track of when things were planted and when to expect a harvest. So right now, being new moon time, it'll be two new moons before we're at the 60-day mark. And so I have recommended some veggies that will harvest in 60 days. So right now, August 16th, we are 10 weeks away from the anticipated first frost date. Um, has anybody here is anyone here an experienced gardener? Has anyone here gardened, the past 4 or 5 years in Oklahoma? When do you usually expect frost, Toria? You'll have to unmute.
Usually like towards the end of October, mid-October to the end of October. Seems like
Yeah,
it gets really cold around that area, that time.
yeah, that's right. And in the past, how it's been for in my experiences, we usually get like a pretty good storm, about the end of October. Um, it'll last maybe a week or two. It'll cool off, and then it'll warm right back up. How many of y'all have? Does that sound familiar to y'all? Some of this Oklahoma weather, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot again. Um, Anyhow, with that, it's a little bit of a gamble to plant some things like cucumbers um, and bush beans. But if you have, say, a little bit of like hoop house plastic, for whenever that storm comes at the end of October, we can cover these plants up, and a lot of these will be able to tolerate the cold, that little cold spell. So some of the things that I wanted to recommend are bush beans. And there's a variety that I'm planting now called Royal Burgundy. I believe it's from Peru, and it produces purple hulls. So that's a bush bean that'll finish in 50 to 60 days, like I said, mid-October. And you can pick the beans before they fill out. You can have green beans and you can steam green beans and they're delicious. These should be ready for harvest by the beginning of October. So some other things that you can plant are kohlrabi. Like we said, cucumbers. There's certain varieties of cucumbers that can be planted now, and as long as they're able to harvest under 60 days, they do really well. Um, there was one variety that I was planting. It is called, let me find this, the name of the ones that I planted. It was called the Straight Eight. That finishes in 52 to 65 days. You don't have to let them get massive. You can pick them while they're about 6 inches. Cucumbers are picked, when they fill out evenly. Um, so these things will finish kind of early for you. Some other options for you are short season broccoli, cauliflower, uh, carrots will do good for you. Cabbage will be something that can be harvested after the end of October. And same with collards, Brussels sprouts, and fennel. Um, so a lot of these things are fairly easy to grow. They don't require a whole lot of fertilizer. So that is now, from now until the full moon. By the full moon is usually when I stop planting seeds. So that's 2 weeks away, and that still puts us at 8 weeks before the first frost. So things kind of change a little bit. As we get a little bit closer into the fall, we're going to start planting seed grains, legumes, and dark leafy greens. And if you ever listen to me talk about seed grains, legumes, and dark leafy greens, I tend to nerd out on it. I'm a big fan. Oh, sorry. Did you have a question, Toria? I see you.
No, sorry.
Oh, okay. Um, does anybody have any questions into some of the last stuff I had just mentioned?
So you mentioned that you don't really need fertilizers for those plants. What kind of soil type would you say they would go really well in?
Potting soil. If you're able to have a raised bed with potting soil, they should do pretty good um, as is. Um, as far as putting them directly in the ground, I don't know. Sometimes, Oklahoma red compact clay soil is tough. So, a raised bed, potting soil planter, these will do well. Um, does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So there will be another run of plants that we could get in the ground. If you're not able to, start planting things now, in 2 weeks' time, we will be planting dark leafy green things that grow well in the cold. So this is arugula, spinach, kale, mustard, and then some of the other cold weather plants are like green onions, radishes, chard, onions, and garlic. Um, I enjoy talking about these plants specifically because these plants are all a little bit spicy. They have a little bit of spice to them. And one of the most interesting aspects about these plants is that when it gets cold, they develop heat. The colder it gets, the hotter they get. Um, if you've ever eaten things like mustard seeds, they're kind of spicy. If you try to drink cold water to cool it off, it gets hotter. And I think this is one of the coolest things about these plants here. So I'm a big fan of winter cultivation, cold weather cultivation. I think it's neat when everybody else is quitting and they stop gardening and your garden is still going strong with dark leafy greens, things that are just looking phenomenal. And so these are some of my favorite things to grow during this time. Arugula is very fast growing. You can put quite a bit in a small garden bed. So these are all the selections that you could fill up a 3 by 10 bed with if you wanted to for this fall. Arugula, radishes, green onions, spinach, radish, chard, kale, mustard, beets, onions, and garlic. And so one thing about beets and chard is that they will do good now, and they will do good in the cold. They're a heat-loving, heat-tolerant crop, and they're a cold-tolerant crop. So you can plant chard and beets multiple times from now, geez, for another whole month, month and a half, you can keep planting these things. Yes, do you have another question, Tori?
Would these all be really good, like companion planters or companion crops?
Yes, these are all compatible plants. Yes, they will do well together. Some of the bigger plants will take up, some space, like say the kale and chard. They're a little bit bigger, and then you can fill in space with the smaller things, the green onions and garlic and things like that. Um, And then I always recommend, like, if you're doing arugula and chard next to each other, do the arugula on the south side because it's a shorter plant. The taller plants will block the sun and slow the growth. So that's my recommendation on some of those things there. Did you have another question, Tori?
No, I don't know why my thing keeps
Oh,
popping up. No, I don't. Not right now.
okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
You said on the south side,
Um,
arugula
of,
plant.
of the taller plants, you want to put the
Mhm.
shorter ones on the south side of the taller ones.
Okay.
Um, okay, so yeah, so those are some of my favorite winter plants. And then I always like to give so anything regarding cultivation, anything I teach anybody about gardening, it all starts with seed sprouting. Seed sprouting is the very basis of it all, and I like teaching people to sprout seeds. So the most basic method that I have is just water and hydrogen peroxide. Soaking the seeds for 24 to 36 hours in water with a splash of hydrogen peroxide. Um, Most seeds it's just 24 to 36 hours, and what the hydrogen peroxide does is it inhibits bad bacteria. So it also inhibits like smells. If you've ever sprouted seeds and let them sit there for a day or two too long, they get kind of funky. So the hydrogen peroxide helps prevent the funk, and it also adds oxygen and hydrogen, which helps increase the sprouting abilities. um, so just soaking them overnight, 24 to 36 hours. If you need to go longer, if the seeds aren't dropping, then you can drain it and refill it again. Go for another 24 hours. What's in the jar here are called mung beans. These things will start sprouting in 24 hours. It's really cool. Not everything does that well. Um, Chili peppers and sometimes tomato seeds take a little bit longer. But does anyone have any questions on seed sprouting? If the Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So after you soak them and you just leave them in there to sprout, or is there like a
No, no, that's the first step is just simply soaking them. And then the second step is to put them in a container with a wet paper towel or a wet rag. Other people have seen, know about like using a Ziploc baggie, soaking seeds, putting them in a wet towel, putting it in a Ziploc baggie, letting it sit for a while. But the bag it's kind of wasteful. So I prefer to use things like Tupperware. Flat Tupperware works the best. So one of the things that after your seeds have been soaked, you can move them to the Tupperware. And what I'll do is I'll take a rag, I'll soak it in water again with a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, wring out the rag and put that in the container. And then lay your seeds flat, uh, uh, put the rag over the top of it, and put the lid on loosely. You don't need to seal it. And then I'll put it away in the cupboard, out of direct sunlight. I'll put it away again for 24 to 36 hours, and you will see the sprouts start to take place. What's pictured here is beans and corn sprouts, which are two of the hardest things to sprout, and preventing odors. But this method is very effective at sprouting seeds without causing bad odors. Does anyone have any questions about this process? Okay, so this is one of my favorite, concepts is, seed sprouting, and in regards to agriculture, I always like to tell people like maybe you only need to sprout a little bit of seeds, but you should keep sprouting seeds anyways because seed sprouts are medicinal. So this first one over here is mung beans. If you've ever gone to get pho or anything like that, they always serve, bean sprouts, and it's mung beans. These are some of the fastest and the healthiest sprouts to make. Here at Skyline, we have our food bank, and some of the things that we give out are seed grains, legumes, and dark leafy greens, peas, lentils, pinto beans, garbanzo beans. And just eating seeds by themselves can be pretty boring. But if you practice sprouting seeds and do this over and over and over and become really good at it, you're also making medicine. Delicious medicine that goes great with salads or just to eat raw. But it's important to know that seed sprouts are much more nutritious than seeds by themselves. A sprouted seed is a living organism, and a dry seed it's not alive. So some of the other things you can do, like if you get good at sprouting seeds, is get into microgreens. And I loved promoting this during the pandemic because for people who don't have gardening space, you can still sprout seeds, put them in a little cup with some soil, put them in the windowsill. When these sprouts start to absorb sunshine, they turn green. If you eat that little green sprout, you're eating sunshine. For mental health and wellness, sprouting seeds can be medicinal. So anyways, I always promote people to sprout seeds, sprout lots of seeds, get good at it. If you struggle to be good at sprouting seeds this fall, keep working at it through the winter time, and you'll be ready for the springtime planting session with more sprouts than you know what to do with. So anyways, that's a little bit of advice on seed sprouting. Does anyone have any questions or comments about seed sprouting? Okay, so one of the other things that we wanted to talk about was container planting tips. For folks who don't have a large garden space, some people might be doing patio gardening. So some of the tips that we have to offer are like when selecting containers, larger containers require less watering. This weekend it's supposed to get 107. So if your container is too small, you might get yourself trapped in a situation where you have to water twice a day. And sometimes that's annoying. You water your plants, you leave for work, and then you're kind of anticipating like, man, it's too hot. They need to be watered at 1 o'clock, but it can't do it. It makes me nervous. So you always want to have a big enough container so that you don't get yourself in that situation. 5-gallon buckets are pretty decent sized container for a lot of plants. And another thing that I always recommend is covering the soil with mulch to help reduce the watering frequency. Covering your soil with a little layer of mulch prevents evaporation. And so this is one of the other beneficials for times like now when it's just super hot. Mulch is one of my absolute favorite things. Selecting mulch, if you're using wood chips, it's important to know that you can't just put wood chips on top of the soil. The wood chips will leach nutrients and steal nutrients from your plants. So what you have to do is you have to put a piece of cardboard there and then the wood chips on top. There has to be that little buffer. And this by itself does wonders to help your plants grow. One of my favorite tips is ground cover. So here's another example, that same planter, except I went and took a cardboard box, cut it up, and put it around the container. A simple cover does wonders for container planting. It's very much like wearing a thin long sleeve shirt and a hat while working in the sun all day. As long as there isn't direct contact with the sun, the container will stay cooler, and this will help preserve water. If you have to move your containers around, I've just become a fan of always putting them back in the same direction. So I like to label the side of the container that is exposed to the sun so that when I put it back, it's returned to the same position. Does anyone have any questions about ground cover or container planter cover tips?
So if we have a container plant, I want for container planting, how often would you say you'd water it?
It all depends on different factors, like if it's in the full sun, if it has cover or not, if it has mulch or not. So for container plantings, one of my favorite tips for watering is to simply tip the container to just kind of tip it sideways. That's my absolute favorite way to check the water content of containers. Uh, uh, After you tip it a few times, you'll start to notice when it's dry, and then you can fill it back up and just get it back to that same level of hydration. Does that help?
Well, I have a really huge container. I don't know if I can lift it. I'm not sure if it's like super, but I have tomatoes and mint and a pepper and basil in there. But it's a big container.
I
Like
got you.
like how far deep should I check to make sure it's watered?
I'll usually just kind of put my fingers in the soil, and if it goes down to your second knuckle, it's dry. It's time to hydrate. But it's also important to let the soil on top dry out just a little bit. So to prevent pests, it's good to let that top 1 inch dry out in between waterings. And then if you stick your finger in there and it goes down to the second knuckle, it's time to water again. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. In regards to container planters, another thing that I wanted to talk about were called SIPs, self-irrigating planters. These have been getting popular the past few years, and this is what I made, and that's what's in this picture here. This bucket here is a self-irrigating planter. Um, on the right is a little drawing of the bucket. You know, the brown part is the soil, and then down below there is a reservoir. There's a reservoir at the bottom of the bucket that holds the water, and there will be a wicking material that will wick the water up into the soil. It works kind of like an oil lantern, where the wick, pulls the fuel up and keeps the flame going. Very much a similar concept. The pictures on the left here are a picture of I got off the internet. Somebody made an SIP using 2 buckets. They drilled holes out of in the bottom of one. They drilled a big hole and they put that hydroponic cup thing in the middle that goes down into the water, and that blue tube is most likely their fill tube. If you see mine here, I have the fill tube on the back side. So what you do is you put your hose in there, you pour your water in, it drains to the bottom to the reservoir, and then the wick draws it all back up, and this helps to maintain a healthy level of soil saturation. So this is an SIP, and this is very versatile. These can be done in buckets. These can be done in raised beds. And one of my favorite aspects about this is how much it conserves water. If you're not watering from the top, you're not going to get soil compaction. And it just does a much better job of keeping all the soil hydrated. So if you're crafty, I suggest going to YouTube, looking up self-irrigating planter, and there are a lot of great videos on the many different styles of SIPs you can create. Yes, so this is the SIP, highly recommended. Like I had said, one of the best ways to check containers is to simply tilt them to the side, prevent the top 1 inch. To prevent pests, let the top 1 inch dry out in between waterings. And then for container planting, sometimes water will just run through dry soil media, and it's kind of annoying. You'll water it, the water will just run right through it. You go to check your plants, they're still dry. So the little saucers that come with planters, those things do wonders to help prevent that water from just running off. I highly recommend that you use saucers to help absorb the excess water. When it comes to watering plants, one of the basic things is that I see like inexperienced gardeners do is they will water the tops of the plants. That's no good. That causes problems. What you want to do is water the soil underneath the plants. So this is one of my highly recommended tips for folks who are going to be gardening this fall. And then another tip that I like to offer is how to manage pests and bugs. Does anybody recognize this brand of castile soap on the left? So this soap, Dr. Bonner's Castile soap. Castile soap is nothing new. It's actually just old-timey soap, how it was made in like the homesteading days. Fat and lye water. You combine the two, and this is how you make liquid soap. The only thing missing are some herbal infusions. So if you were to add eucalyptus essential oil, rosemary essential oil, thyme essential oil, or tea tree essential oil. Even lemongrass essential oils can be added to castile soap, and this will work to keep pests off of your plants. Do you have a question, Tori?
I
Uh,
know, sorry.
yeah, so this is very effective for, simple bugs like aphids and whatnot. Um, um, Mix 1 to 2 teaspoons of soap per quart of water. Now, this depends on whether or not you have hard water. And I like talking about this fact because it's related to like soaps that we use at home. If you have hard water and you try to use castile soap, it's not very effective. You have to like wash your hair once, rinse it out, and then wash again. Versus commercial soaps where they're just super sudsy all the time. But that's because of their unnatural additives. Um, so the culprit is hard water. Hard water makes soap less effective. Hard water also is hard on your body. It can be hard on kidneys, and it's hard on your skin. It can cause eczema, dry scalp, dandruff, so many other issues. So if you have hard water, you'll need to run your water through a simple like Brita filter. Those do wonders to help remove some of the hardness and make the castile soaps more effective. So 1 to 2 teaspoons per quart is a good start. Um, uh, if you spray it and if you shake the water up and it's not very bubbly, you can step it up. You can go from 1 to 2 tablespoons per quart until you get a good amount of suds. So the soap will help the water and the oil to stick to the leaves and the bugs, and this will help make it more effective at chasing them away. Any organic IPM product that you buy on the market usually just has thyme and rosemary oils in it. So we can make our own using rosemary, thyme, tea tree oil, lemongrass. You can actually make really great soap for home use, dual purpose for you, your plants, and even your kids. So I always like giving tips on castile soap solutions for IPM. But it looks like that's about it for our 30-minute class today. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
To spray the solution there, how often would you spray?
Um, I would say twice a week could do well. I actually have other fertilizers that I make, and I wanted to include a video. They help keep pests off as well. So this one by itself, I don't have to use it too often. I would say twice a week, and you always want to spray underneath the foliage and the stems of the plant, and it's best to do this in the early morning. So those are some of the tips that I have for utilizing this type of spray. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so these are some of the basic tips that we have to offer for fall gardening, and I hope that y'all are able to use some of this information. I really hope that you can find some good. There's still scallop squashes. They're pretty fast blooming. If you're into eating squash blossom flowers, you can pick the flowers before the fruit forms. And you could probably still get away with some, like I said, some short season cucumbers, but you can constantly sprout chard and beets, and they're easy to grow. Very nutritious, very tasty. Um, you just have to get them sprouted. That's my recommendation, is to get them sprouted before you put them in the ground. And then after they're in the ground, you want to water them every day for the first week, and this will help them to take root. I've had a lot of trouble in the past with getting my seeds to grow, and it was mostly due to not consistently watering for that first week. So that's one of the biggest pointers that I could give you about that. But if nobody else has any questions or comments, I'd say that's about it. And Joel will be sending copies of this to everyone after the class. And then we always want to let you know that if you're local here at Skyline Urban Ministries, you can come and volunteer and work in our garden and get hands-on experience with a lot of this stuff. Over the next two weeks, I'm going to be sprouting a lot of seeds and putting them in the ground. So yeah, I think that's about it. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing all this information. I look forward to fall gardening.
Yes, thank you so much. I learned a lot.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's about it. Okay. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.